Innocent beggar tells paraplegic millionaire, "I can teach you to walk." Minutes later, something incredible happens. Rain fell relentlessly over New York City that autumn afternoon. Droplets streamed down the panoramic window of the luxurious penthouse where Michael Brooks observed the grey city, seated in his wheelchair. At 38 years old, the former Olympic swimmer who had once conquered dozens of medals now found himself trapped in a world of golden solitude. The 5,000-square-foot apartment, decorated with a mix of contemporary art and designer furniture, reflected the financial success that Michael had achieved throughout the years. But in that moment, as he observed the city through the foggy glass, all that luxury seemed empty, meaningless. 5 years had passed since the accident that changed his life. One night, returning from a charity gala, his car had skidded on the wet road. The impact was devastating, not for the physical pain, but for the sentence that came afterward. He would never use his legs again. For someone who had dedicated his life to sports, who felt water as an extension of his own body, that news was like a fatal blow to his dreams. Since then, Michael had become a different person. The charismatic smile that once charmed cameras gave way to a bitter, almost cynical expression. His fortune, built through sponsorships and smart investments, allowed him to live with every possible comfort. But money couldn't buy what he desired. Most, his freedom of movement. "Mr. Brooks, lunch is served," announced Helen, the housekeeper who had worked for him for more than a decade. She was one of the few people who could still see traces of the old Michael behind that mask of bitterness. "I'm not hungry," he answered dryly, without taking his eyes off the window. "Cancel my appointments for today." "But sir, the foundation board is expecting you for the 3 o'clock meeting. It's important." "I said cancel." His voice echoed through the room, making Helen step back. Immediately, a flash of regret crossed his face. "I'm sorry, Helen. I just need to be alone today." After the housekeeper left, Michael remained there motionless, observing the city pulsing below. People seemed like hurried ants, running from one side to the other with their colorful umbrellas. How he envied that simplicity, that ability to simply walk. Loneliness was his only constant companion. Of course, there were parties, social events, people who surrounded him out of interest in his fortune or status. But nobody really knew him. Nobody understood the depth of the emptiness that consumed him inside. That afternoon, seized by an impulse he couldn't explain, Michael decided to do something different. He dismissed his driver and, for the first time in months, decided to go out alone. His motorized wheelchair, a state-of-the-art piece of equipment, allowed him to move with relative ease. The doorman of the building seemed surprised to see him leaving unaccompanied, but didn't dare make any comment. Michael felt the first raindrops touch his face as he descended the access ramp. It was a strange feeling, almost forgotten, to feel rainwater without the protection of an umbrella or car window. The streets of the Upper East Side, normally so familiar, seemed different from this perspective. People looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and pity, a look he had learned to hate. But that day, something was different. He didn't care about the looks. He was too absorbed in his own thoughts. He passed luxury stores, elegant cafes, places he used to frequent in his old life. Each storefront reflected not only his current image, but also shadows of what he used to be. The victorious athlete, the poster boy for dozens of brands, the man who seemed to have the world at his feet. The rain began to intensify, but Michael didn't care. He continued his path, letting the water wash away some of the bitterness he carried. It was then, when turning a less busy corner, that something caught his attention. Or rather, someone. Sitting on the step of an old doorway, only partially protected from the rain, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her simple clothes were a bit dirty, and she held a worn blanket against her chest. But what impressed Michael most wasn't her apparently precarious condition, but her gaze. It was a different look from anything he had ever seen. There was no sadness, fear, or plea in those eyes. There was something more, something he couldn't define. The girl observed him with a serenity that seemed displaced, as if she held a secret that the whole world was unaware of. Michael stopped his chair, hypnotized by that unexpected presence. For a moment, he forgot about the rain, the cold, his own condition. There was only him and that child, exchanging a look that seemed to cross all the social and physical barriers that separated them. And then, breaking the silence of that surreal moment, the girl smiled. A pure, genuine smile, the kind Michael hadn't seen directed at him for a long time. And with a soft but surprisingly clear voice, she said something that would forever change the course of his story. "I can teach you to walk." Michael felt a mixture of disbelief and irritation at those words. How dare a street child joke about something so serious? He was about to turn away when the girl continued, with the same disconcerting serenity. "Not with your legs, with your heart." Something in the way she pronounced those words made him hesitate. It wasn't the type of phrase one would expect from such a small child. There was a depth there, a wisdom that seemed to come from somewhere far beyond her few years of life. "What's your name?" asked Michael, surprising himself with the sudden interest. "Lily," she answered, adjusting the worn blanket over her shoulders. "And you're the man who swims like a dolphin. I saw you on television before." The unexpected comparison drew an involuntary smile from Michael, the first in a long time. "Used to swim," he corrected with a touch of bitterness. "That was before?" Lily tilted her head slightly, as if analyzing something very complex. "Before what? Before your heart stopped swimming too?" The question hit him like a punch to the stomach. How did this child manage to see so deeply inside him? Michael felt a sudden need to defend himself, to reaffirm all the reasons why his life had ended in that accident. "You don't understand," he said, his voice betraying a mixture of anger and sadness. "I lost everything. My career, my independence, your joy," completed Lily with disarming simplicity. "But it's still there. It's just sleeping, like a seed waiting for the rain to pass so it can grow again." Michael remained silent, absorbing those words. The rain had diminished to a fine drizzle, and some rays of sunlight began to break through the clouds, creating a peculiar brightness in the puddles forming on the sidewalk. "How can you be so sure?" he asked, more to himself than to her. Lily smiled again, a smile that seemed to illuminate her entire face. "Because I see colors in you, many colors, all mixed together, but some are hidden underneath a dark, sad color. Just clean away that sadness, and the other colors will appear again." The way she spoke, mixing childish innocence with inexplicable wisdom, began to intrigue Michael more and more. He looked around, searching for some adult who might be responsible for her. "Where are your parents?" he asked, trying to better understand this surreal situation. Lily's smile didn't diminish, but her eyes gained a different shine. "They're in a beautiful place now, but you don't have to be sad for me. I have many friends here. The street people, the birds, even the sun is my friend. It always comes back to warm me even after the strongest rain." Michael felt something strange in his chest, a mixture of compassion and admiration. How could a child who had apparently lost everything maintain that light in her eyes, while he, with all his fortune, lived immersed in darkness? "Do you want to learn the first lesson today?" asked Lily, rising from the step where she was sitting. Her small stature barely reached the height of Michael's wheelchair armrest. "What lesson?" he asked, still uncertain about actually considering receiving life lessons from a street child. "The lesson of silence," she answered, with a mysterious air. "To hear your heart, first you need to make silence. All that noise of sadness doesn't. Let us hear the important things." Lily then closed her eyes and became completely still. Michael observed, fascinated, how she seemed to transform into a small statue, oblivious to the movement of the city around her. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes again. "Your turn," she said, with the naturalness of someone teaching something. "Very simple. Close your eyes and try to listen." For some reason he couldn't explain, Michael obeyed. He closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. At first, all he could hear was the noise of traffic, the murmur of people passing by, the sound of fine drizzle falling. "Don't listen with your ears. Lily's voice seemed to come from far away. "Listen with your heart." And then something strange happened. For a brief moment, Michael felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. It was as if all the weight he carried had been momentarily suspended, leaving only a sensation of lightness. When he opened his eyes, he found Lily smiling at him, as if she knew exactly what he had experienced. "See, your heart still knows how to dance. It just needs a little silence to remember how." In that moment, something changed inside Michael. It wasn't a big or dramatic change, but it was as if a small crack had opened in a wall that he himself had built around him. A crack through which perhaps light could begin to enter again. "More tomorrow?" he asked, surprising himself with his own interest. Lily nodded, her eyes shining with genuine joy. "Tomorrow I'll teach you the second lesson, but only if you promise to bring a little less sadness and a little more curiosity." Michael found himself smiling again, a genuine smile this time. "I promise to try," he answered, feeling that something important was beginning there on that rainy afternoon with that unlikely teacher. The next morning, Michael woke up with a different sensation. The weight he used to feel upon opening. His eyes seemed a little less intense. As Helen helped him with his morning routine, she noticed something different in his countenance. "You seem lighter today, sir," she commented while arranging the cushions on his chair. "Did something special happen yesterday?" Michael hesitated for a moment. How could he explain his encounter with Lily? How could he make someone understand that a street child had shaken his foundations in a way that years of therapy couldn't? "I met someone," he answered simply, observing through the window that the day had dawned sunny, different from the rainy afternoon before. Helen smiled discreetly, continuing her tasks without asking more questions. She knew her employer well, enough to know that when he wanted to, he would share more details. After breakfast, Michael surprised everyone by announcing he would go out alone again. His personal assistant, Richard, tried to argue about the day's commitments. "Mr. Brooks, the foundation board rescheduled the meeting for today, and there are 3 sponsorship proposals waiting for your analysis. Take care of that for me." "Richard," interrupted Michael, already heading to the elevator, "you have the authority to decide on the proposals. As for the meeting, reschedule it for tomorrow." Richard was dumbfounded. In 5 years working for Michael, it was the first time he had seen him delegating important decisions this way. Something had definitely changed. Michael traveled the same path as the day before, his heart beating a little faster as he approached the place where he had met Lily. Part of him feared that it had all been a hallucination, a moment of daydreaming on. A sad day, but she was there, sitting on the same step, but this time with a small notepad and some colored pencils scattered by her side. When she saw him, her face lit up with that smile that seemed to carry all the secrets of the universe. "You came," she exclaimed, putting away her drawings. "And you brought less sadness today, I can see." Michael couldn't help but smile. "As promised. And what's today's lesson?" Lily stood up, taking just one of the colored pencils, a well-worn yellow one, and putting it in the pocket of her simple dress. "Today we're going to learn about the sun that lives inside us." She began to walk, signaling for Michael to follow her. He hesitated for a moment, looking around. The street was busy, and the idea of following an unknown child seemed at the very least imprudent. "Where are we going?" he asked, still uncertain. "To the secret garden," answered Lily, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "It's close by, I promise. It's where I keep my colors." Something in the way she spoke with that unique mixture of innocence and wisdom made Michael decide to trust. They traveled a few blocks, Lily walking calmly beside his wheelchair, occasionally pointing to things that caught her attention. "Look, that cloud looks like a rabbit," she would say. Or, "See how the sidewalk flowers dance with the wind?" Michael began to realize that Lily saw the world in a completely different way. Where he saw only a grey and hostile city, she found beauty in the smallest details. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small park hidden between 2 old buildings. It was a surprisingly peaceful place, with some trees and wooden benches. Lily guided him to a particular flower bed, where some wildflowers grew in a disorderly fashion. "Here," she said, sitting on the grass and taking the yellow pencil from her pocket. "This is my secret garden. I planted these flowers with seeds I found. Some people say they're weeds, but I think they're stars that decided to live on Earth." Michael observed the small yellow flowers, swaying gently with the morning breeze. They were dandelions, flowers that many considered pests, but that there under Lily's gaze really seemed like small terrestrial stars. "Today's lesson," she continued, holding the yellow pencil as if it were a magic wand, "is about finding the sun that exists inside us. Even when it's raining outside, even when everything seems dark, it's there." "And how do you do that?" asked Michael, increasingly involved in the unique way Lily saw the world. "First," she explained, "you need to believe it exists. It's like these flowers. Before they were born, they were just tiny seeds. But they knew they could become stars, so they kept growing, even when nobody believed in them." Lily then extended the yellow pencil to Michael. "Now close your eyes and hold this. Imagine that all the sunlight is stored inside this pencil. When you hold it really tight, the light will pass into your heart." Michael took the pencil, feeling a bit silly at first. But as he closed his eyes, something strange began to happen. The warmth of the sun on his face, the smell of the flowers, the soft sound of the wind in the trees, everything began to create a sensation of peace that he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Can you feel it?" Lily's voice seemed to come from far away. "That warmth in your chest, it's your own sun waking up. It was sleeping for so long that it almost forgot how to shine." When Michael opened his eyes, he realized he was crying. They weren't tears of sadness like the many he had shed in recent years. They were different tears, as if something inside him was finally thawing. Lily observed him with that wise look that seemed not to belong to a child of her age. "Now you know where your sun lives. It will always be there, even when you think it's too dark to shine." In that moment, sitting in his wheelchair in a secret garden next to a girl who talked about inner suns and starflowers, Michael began to feel that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for his frozen heart. The following days brought a subtle but noticeable change to the routine of the Brooks mansion. The staff commented among themselves about Michael's daily outings, always at the same time, always alone. Helen, who had known him the longest, noticed small transformations in his behavior: a warmer "good morning," an occasional smile during breakfast, more patience with the small annoyances of daily life. On a particularly busy morning, Richard entered Michael's office with a concerned expression. "Mr. Brooks, I need your attention for an urgent matter." Michael was concentrating on a drawing made with colored pencils, something that would have seemed completely absurd a few weeks ago. Lily had given him the homework of drawing his inner sun, and he was determined to complete it, even if his artistic abilities were limited. "What's the matter, Richard?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the paper. "The press, they're speculating about your mysterious outings. Some photos of you have circulated on social media, and the tabloids are creating theories about a possible new experimental treatment or a secret romance." This finally caught Michael's attention. He put down the colored pencil and faced his assistant. "And since when do we care what the tabloids say? Since it can affect the advertising contracts we still maintain. The brands are asking questions. The investors are curious. They want to know what's happening with you." Michael turned his chair to the window, observing the garden of his mansion. The perfectly manicured flowers, organized in geometric beds, suddenly seemed too artificial to him, without the life and spontaneity of Lily's small star flowers. "You know, Richard," he began, with a calm voice that surprised his assistant, "a few weeks ago I would have panicked about this situation. I would have demanded immediate damage control, official statements, all that circus we used to do. But today, I can only think how funny it is that they're looking for answers in the wrong places." Richard blinked a few times, confused. "What do you mean, sir?" "They're looking for experimental treatments, secret romances, anything that might explain a change in the famous Michael Brooks." He gave a soft laugh. "But the truth is much simpler and at the same time, much more extraordinary. At that moment, the clock struck 10 and Michael began to prepare to leave. Richard observed him, still concerned. "What should I tell the journalists?" "Tell them Michael Brooks is learning to walk again," he answered, a small smile playing on his lips. "They won't understand, but it doesn't matter. The only person who needs to understand already does." Leaving a stunned Richard behind, Michael headed for his daily meeting with Lily. He found her in the secret garden, but something was different. The girl seemed quieter than normal, hugging a very worn small storybook. "Did you bring your homework?" she asked, her voice a little less animated than usual. Michael showed the drawing he had made, a somewhat awkward attempt to represent a sun with rays of different colors. "It didn't turn out as beautiful as I wanted," he admitted. Lily examined the drawing with attention. "It's perfect," she finally declared. "Do you know why? Because you used all the colors that were hidden inside you. See these red rays? That's your courage coming back. The blue ones are your inner peace. The yellow ones, well, those are your sun, which is growing bigger every day." She paused, hugging the book more tightly. "Michael, today I need to tell you something." It was the first time she had called him by name, and something in her voice made his heart tighten. "What is it, Lily? Remember when I told you I have many friends? One of them, Mrs. Johnson from the church, she got a spot for me in a place where children like me can have a real home with a warm bed and food every day." Michael felt as if something cold had been poured into his chest. You're leaving?" Lily nodded slowly. "The shelter is in another city. Mrs. Johnson said it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that I'll be able to study, have a family." "But what about our lessons?" Michael's voice came out weaker than he intended. "There's still so much I need to learn." Lily smiled, that wise smile that seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe. "You've already learned the most important lesson, Michael. You already know where your sun lives. Now you just need to keep letting it shine." She opened the worn book she was holding, taking out from inside it a drawing made with the same yellow pencil she had used to teach Michael about his inner sun. It was a portrait of him, not in his wheelchair, but standing, surrounded by sun rays and starflowers. "This is you," she said, handing him the drawing. "Not as you see yourself now, but as I've always seen you. A person who can walk with their heart, even when their legs don't work. A person who has such a big sun inside them that they can illuminate the whole world." Michael held the drawing with trembling hands, feeling tears beginning to form in his eyes. When do you go?" "Tomorrow morning," answered Lily, her voice mixing sadness and hope. "But before that, I have one last lesson to teach you, the most important one of all." The sun was beginning to set in the secret garden, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Lily stood up and extended her small hand to Michael. "The last lesson can't be here," she said with a gentle seriousness. "We need to go to a special place." Michael nodded, still holding the drawing she had given him. "Where are we going?" "To, the place where it all began," answered Lily, beginning to guide him out of the garden. They traveled the streets in silence, Lily walking beside Michael's wheelchair. The route was familiar. They were the same streets where they had met for the first time weeks ago, on that rainy afternoon that now seemed to have happened in another life. When they reached the old doorway where Lily used to shelter, she stopped. The place seemed different now, illuminated by the last rays of the setting sun. A small bag was leaning against the wall, probably containing the few belongings Lily would take to her new life. "Do you know why I chose this place to stay?" she asked, sitting on the same step where Michael had first seen her. He shook his head, curious. "Because from here I could see the whole world pass by," she explained, her eyes shining with an ancient wisdom. "Happy people, sad people, people in a hurry, lost people. Each one carrying their own story, their own inner sun. Some knew they had this sun, others had completely forgotten." Lily paused, taking something from the pocket of her dress. It was the yellow pencil, now even more worn from use. "When I saw you on that rainy day, I realized you were like those people who had forgotten their sun. But there was something different about you. a tiny light, very weak, that was still flickering inside, asking for help. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Why did you decide to help me?" Lily's smile widened. "Because that's the greatest magic in the world. When we help someone find their light, our own light gets stronger. It's like lighting a candle. The flame doesn't diminish when we share its fire with another candle. On the contrary, now there's more light in the world." She stood up, approaching Michael with the yellow pencil in her hand. "And that's the last lesson, the most important of all. The light you found inside yourself isn't just yours. It exists to be shared." Michael looked at the pencil, confused. "But how?" "Look around you," Lily gestured to the busy street. "How many people pass by here every day, carrying their own burdens, their own pains? How many of them have forgotten they have a sun inside them? You now know what it's like to live in darkness, but you've also learned how to find the light again. That makes you special." She placed the yellow pencil in Michael's hand. "This pencil is no longer just a pencil. It's a reminder. Every time you look at it, you'll remember that your light doesn't depend on your legs, but on your heart. And more importantly, you'll remember that you have the power to help others find their own lights." Tears were freely flowing down Michael's face now. "But how will I do this without you, Lily? You're the one who knows all the lesson." Lily laughed, a crystalline sound that echoed down the street. "I only showed you the way. The lessons were always inside you. Do you know how I know that? Because you're already different. Your eyes have more light. Your smile comes more easily. Your sadness is lighter. The people around you are already noticing, aren't they?" Michael thought about Helen, about Richard, about the small comments on his changes in behavior. It was true. Something had changed, and it wasn't just Lily's lessons. It was as if she had unlocked a door inside him, allowing his own light to shine again. "Now," continued Lily, her voice becoming softer, "you have a mission. Just as I helped you find your inner sun, you can help others find theirs. It doesn't have to be the same way I did it. Each person has their own way of sharing light." She picked up her small bag, indicating it was time to leave. "Do you promise you'll fulfill this mission?" Michael held the yellow pencil tightly, feeling as if he were receiving not just an object, but a sacred responsibility. "I promise," he answered, his voice firm despite the tears. Lily smiled, that smile that seemed to contain all the secrets of the universe. "Then the last lesson is complete, because in the end, Michael, it's not our legs that make us walk through the world. It's our ability to touch the hearts of others and let them touch ours." The sun had completely set now, but the sky still maintained a golden glow on the horizon. Lily looked up, observing the first stars beginning to appear. "See? Even when the sun sets, its light continues there, reflected in the stars. That's how it works when we share our light with others. It continues shining even when we're far away." The next morning, Michael woke before sunrise. He had spent the night awake, turning over in his mind every word from Lily, every lesson, every shared moment. The yellow pencil rested on his bedside table, along with the drawing she had made of him. Without calling his driver or notifying any staff member, he maneuvered his wheelchair to the street. The sky was still dark, but a clear strip on the horizon announced the arrival of day. His heart was beating fast as he headed to the place where Lily used to stay. But when he got there, the step was empty. In the place where she used to sit, there was only a small starflower, a solitary dandelion that had grown between the cracks in the concrete. Michael felt tears return to his eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of loss, but of gratitude. "Sir, is everything okay?" The voice came from a woman who was sweeping the sidewalk in front of her shop. She looked at Michael with a concerned expression. "Yes," he answered, wiping his eyes. "I was just looking for someone. A little girl who used to stay here. Lily." The woman frowned, confused. "Lily, I'm sorry, sir, but I don't remember any child around. Here, I open the shop early every day and I've never seen any little girl in this place." Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. How was it possible? He had spent weeks talking with Lily, learning from her, being transformed by her presence. She was real. The yellow pencil in his pocket and the drawing in his home proved it. But before he could question further, something caught his attention. A young man walked hurriedly past on the sidewalk, but his eyes were red from crying. Without thinking twice, Michael called out to him, "Hey, are you okay?" The man stopped, surprised by the approach. He hesitated for a moment, as if he were going to continue on his way, but something in Michael's look made him stay. "Actually, no," he answered. His voice choked. "I just lost my job. 15 years at the same company, and now I don't know what I'm going to do." Michael felt something awaken inside him, that same light that Lily had helped rekindle. "You know," he said, taking the yellow pencil from his pocket, "someone very wise taught me that sometimes we need to make silence to hear our heart. How about sitting in that cafe over there? I'll buy you a coffee and we can talk a bit." The man looked at Michael, at his wheelchair, and then at the yellow pencil in his hand. For a moment, it seemed he was going to refuse, but then something in his face changed, as if a small light had also been lit inside him. "You know what? I'd love that," he answered. As they headed to the cafe, Michael looked once more at the empty step where Lily used to stay. The solitary dandelion swayed gently with the morning breeze, its golden petals shining with the first rays of sun. And in that moment, Michael understood. Lily might not be there physically anymore, but her light continued to shine, now through him, and soon through all the people he could help find their own inner suns. Taking the yellow pencil, he twirled it between his fingers, remembering Lily's words. "The light you found inside yourself isn't just yours. It exists to be shared." And there, on that ordinary morning that suddenly seemed magical, Michael began his new mission. Because now he knew it didn't matter if his legs didn't work, his heart had learned to walk again, and this was just the beginning of his journey. A journey of light, hope, and transformation, not just for him, but for all those who, like that man in the cafe, needed help to rediscover their own inner sun. In the weeks that followed, the Brooks mansion underwent a surprising transformation. The garden, previously rigorously manicured and organized, now had beds where wildflowers grew freely among the ornamental flowers. Helen observed, amazed, how her employer spent hours personally tending to these new gardens, planting dandelion seeds and other flowers that many would consider invasive. "They're stars that chose to live on Earth," he explained, when someone questioned his new passion for gardening. His eyes shone in a different way when he said this, as if sharing a precious secret. But the most significant change wasn't in the gardens, but in Michael himself. The bitter and reclusive man had given way to someone who radiated a different energy. He began to receive people in his home, no longer the celebrities and businessmen of before, but ordinary people, often those whom society tended to ignore. It all started with Tom, the man who had lost his job. After that coffee on the morning Lily left, Michael not only helped him find new work, but also discovered in him an ally for his new project. "We need to create a space," explained Michael, during one of their meetings, twirling the yellow pencil between his fingers, a habit he had developed when he was especially inspired. "A place where people can rediscover their own light." And so the Inner Light Project was born. Michael transformed an entire wing of his mansion into a center for shelter and personal development. The rooms previously occupied by trophies and medals now housed workshops for art, music, and meditation. The place where he used to keep his collection of luxury cars became a large hall with a winter garden, where people from all backgrounds could meet and share their stories. Richard, who initially resisted the idea of transforming the mansion into a community center, ended up becoming one of the project's greatest enthusiasts. "It's amazing," he commented during a meeting. "The press that used to chase us for gossip now wants to do stories about social transformation and overcoming." But Michael wasn't interested in publicity. His attention was focused on the small transformations he saw happening daily. Like Amanda, a young ballerina who had lost a leg in an accident and found in the project not only emotional support, but also the inspiration to create an adaptive dance school. "You taught me that we don't need perfect legs to dance," she told Michael during a performance by her students. "We just need to let our heart dance first." Michael smiled, recognizing in her words the echo of Lily's lessons. That's how the light multiplied. Each person touched by the project became a new source of inspiration for others. Mornings at the mansion now began with meeting the inner sun sessions, a practice that Michael developed based on his experiences with Lily. Participants gathered in the garden among the starflowers and learned to make silence to hear their hearts. "Close your eyes," he instructed, his soft voice guiding the group. "Imagine that inside you there exists a sun. It may be covered by clouds of worry, fear, or sadness, but it's always there. Our task is simply to remove these clouds, one by one, with gentleness and patience." On one of these mornings, an elderly woman approached him after the session, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "You know," she said, "I spent my entire life looking for answers in complicated places. Who would have thought the solution was as simple as making silence and listening to your own heart?" Michael smiled, remembering how he himself had taken so long to learn this lesson. "Sometimes," he answered, "we need an angel to show us the way." That night, after everyone had gone, Michael would go to his secret garden, a special small bed where he cultivated the most beautiful dandelions. There, under the stars, he would talk to Lily in his thoughts, telling her about each new light he had helped ignite, each heart that had learned to walk again. On his desk, the drawing she had made of him standing surrounded by sunrays was now framed. Beside it, a recent photo showed Michael surrounded by dozens of people, all smiling, all carrying in their eyes that special brightness of those who had rediscovered their inner light. And it was on one of these nights of reflection that Michael had an idea that would change his life even more, and the lives of many other people. Picking up his phone, he called Richard. "Remember that large piece of land we have in the South District? I think it's time we build something special there, something Lily would love to see." The project for the new community center began to take shape with surprising speed. Michael, who previously used his influence and resources only to increase his own fortune, was now completely dedicated to creating something truly transformative. "I want it to be a place where people can meet with their own light," he explained during the first meeting with the architects. "Each space should tell a story of possibilities, of new beginnings." The design of the center was inspired by a rising sun, a circular building with wings extending like golden rays. In the center, a large covered garden would be the heart of the project, filled with starflowers and living areas. The walls would be painted in soft shades of yellow and orange, creating a constant sensation of dawn. "And here," pointed Michael to a special area in the project, "I want to create the Heart Whispers Room, a space where people can make silence and hear their own truths." Helen, who followed the whole process with maternal interest, couldn't help but notice how her employer had changed. It wasn't just his new life mission, it was as if he had recovered something precious that he had lost a long time ago. "You look younger, sir," she commented one morning while helping him with his routine. "Your eyes have a different shine." Michael smiled, taking the yellow pencil he always carried with him. "You know, Helen, I discovered that age isn't in the number of years we live, but in the amount of light we manage to keep in our heart." The impact of Michael's work began to spread far beyond the walls of his mansion. People from other cities, and even from other states, began to seek him out, wanting to learn about the Inner Light project. Journalists no longer asked about his personal life or the accident. Now they wanted to know about social transformation and emotional healing. In a particularly touching interview for a major magazine, Michael finally shared the story of Lily. The reporter, intrigued, tried to find out more about the mysterious girl who had changed the life of one of the country's richest men. "We looked in all the shelters in the region," she said, "but we found no records of a girl named Lily being transferred at the time you mentioned." Michael just smiled, twirling the yellow pencil between his fingers. "Maybe Lily wasn't meant to be found," he answered. "Maybe she was exactly what each of us needs in moments of darkness, a reminder that our inner light never completely goes out. The construction of the new center was advancing rapidly, and Michael made a point of personally accompanying each stage. One afternoon, while supervising the installation of the first flower beds in the central garden, he noticed a small girl observing the works through the gate. For a moment, his heart stopped. There was something familiar in her gaze. He approached her, his wheelchair sliding smoothly along the newly paved path. "Hello," he said, smiling. "Would you like to see our garden?" The girl, who must have been the same age as Lily, returned the smile. "Is it true that here you teach people to find the sun that lives inside them?" Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. "Yes," he answered, his voice choked with emotion. "How do you know that?" "My teacher told me," she said simply. "She said that everyone has a sun inside them, but sometimes we forget how to make it shine." At that moment, a group of workers called Michael's attention to an urgent matter. When he turned back to the gate, the girl had disappeared. But in the place where she had been, a small dandelion had sprouted between the cracks in the concrete, its golden petals shining under the afternoon sunlight. Michael smiled, gently touching the flower with his fingertips. It didn't matter if Lily had been real in the conventional sense of the word. Her light was real, and it continued to multiply through each person who learned to rediscover their own inner sun. That night, alone in his office, Michael took a blank piece of paper and the yellow pencil. He began to write a letter, not to Lily, but to all the people who, like him, needed help to find their way back to the light. "Dear friends," he began, "there exists a sun inside each one of us." The letter that Michael wrote that night transformed into something much greater than he could imagine. Richard, upon finding it on the desk the next morning, was so touched by the words that he suggested turning it into a book. "People need to hear this story," he insisted, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Not just about Lily, but about how you found a new purpose, how you're helping other people reconnect with their own light." Michael initially hesitated. The story of Lily seemed like something so personal, so sacred. But then he remembered her. Last lesson, light exists to be shared. During the following months, while the community center took shape, Michael dedicated his nights to writing. Each chapter of the book was like a new conversation with Lily, a way to keep her teachings alive. He wrote by hand, always with the yellow pencil, which was now so small he could barely hold it. "Why don't you use a computer?" asked Helen one night, finding him bent over the handwritten pages. "Because each word needs to pass through the heart before reaching the paper," he answered, smiling. "Lily taught me that true magic happens when we let our light flow naturally." The book, titled Lily's Lessons, Rediscovering the Inner Sun, was launched at the inauguration of the community center. The event gathered hundreds of people, many of whom had been touched by the Inner Light project over the past few months. Amanda, the ballerina, organized a special performance with her students. On the adapted stage, wheelchair users and non-wheelchair users danced together, telling through their movements their stories of overcoming and rebirth. The music that accompanied the presentation was an original composition, inspired by the sound of the wind among the star flowers. During the event, something extraordinary began to happen. People from the audience began to stand up spontaneously to share their own stories of transformation. Tom, the first to be touched by the project after Lily's departure, told how he had not only regained his confidence, but also helped dozens of other unemployed people find new paths. An elderly woman shared how the Meeting the Inner Sun sessions had helped heal her years of depression. "Before I only saw darkness," she said, emotional. "Now each morning is a new opportunity to shine." In the center of the garden, a special monument was inaugurated, a bronze sculpture representing a little girl sitting on a step, a book in her lap, and a serene smile on her face. At her feet, real dandelions grew freely, their golden petals dancing with the breeze. Michael observed all this from his wheelchair, feeling his heart overflowing with gratitude. The yellow pencil, now kept in a small glass box like a precious relic, rested in his lap along with the drawing that Lily had made of him. It was then that a little girl from the audience, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, approached him with curiosity. "Mister," she asked, pointing to the sculpture, "is that Lily?" Michael smiled, feeling that familiar emotion tighten his chest. "Yes," he answered. "Do you know her?" The girl shook her head negatively. "No, but sometimes when I'm sad I feel as if someone were hugging me and saying everything will be okay. Could it be her?" Before Michael could answer, a gentle wind blew through the garden, making the dandelion seeds dance in the air like small stars. The girl laughed, enchanted, trying to catch the floating seeds with her little hands. "You know," said Michael, observing the seeds flying away, "Lily taught me that there are different types of hugs in the world. Some come from the people we love, others come from the sun that shines on special mornings, and some," he paused, smiling at the girl, "some come from angels who appear exactly when we need them most." The little girl nodded, as if that made perfect sense to her. "Like the star flowers, right? They're also hugs that grow from the ground." Michael felt his eyes fill with tears. It was amazing how children had this capacity to see such profound truths with such simplicity. "Exactly like that," he agreed. At that moment, Richard took the stage to announce that the first copy of the book would be donated to the center's library. Michael observed as his assistant opened the volume to the first page, where a special dedication was printed. "To Lily, who taught me that it's not our legs that make us walk, but the light we carry inside us. And to all those who, like me, need an occasional reminder that their inner sun never stops shining." The words, printed in soft gold, seemed to sparkle under the lights of the hall. And somehow, in that magical moment, all those present could feel, even if for a brief instant, the warmth of that special sun that Lily had helped so many to rediscover. The success of the book Lily's Lessons exceeded all expectations. In a matter of weeks, the story had touched hearts across the country. Letters and emails began to arrive from everywhere, each telling how the story of Lily and Michael had awakened something special in their lives. But the most surprising impact came from an unexpected source. One morning, while Michael was conducting a Meeting the Inner Sun session in the center's garden, Helen appeared running, holding a yellow envelope in her hands. "Mr. Michael," she said, breathless, "I think you need to see this." Inside the envelope was an old photograph, yellowed by time. It showed the facade of an orphanage that had existed decades ago in that same region of the city. In the photo, among a group of children, was a girl with a serene smile and deep eyes holding a yellow pencil. On the back of the photo, a date, 1955. "This photo was kept in the archives of the old institution," explained Helen. "The woman who found it read your book and said she needed to share this with you." Michael observed the image with a racing heart. The resemblance was unmistakable. It was Lily or someone impressively similar to her. But how was it possible? The photo was almost 70 years old. "There's more," continued Helen, taking a folded piece of paper from the envelope. It was a page from an old diary, written in delicate handwriting. "Today, Lily left us. She was different from the other children. She had a wisdom that didn't match her age, and a special gift for consoling those who were suffering. She always said that everyone had a sun inside them. They just needed to learn how to find it. Even after her departure, her words continue to echo through the corridors of the orphanage, reminding us that true light never goes out." Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. The coincidences were too many to be ignored, but at the same time they seemed to confirm something he already knew in his heart, that Lily was more than a simple child. She was a messenger of hope, who appeared to those who most needed light. That afternoon, while reflecting on this discovery in his office, Michael received an unexpected visit. It was an elderly gentleman who introduced himself as a former employee of the orphanage. "I read your book," he said, his eyes shining with contained tears, "and I need to tell you something. Lily wasn't just a child who passed through that orphanage. She was a presence that appeared in moments of great need. Over the years, I received several reports from people who met her in different eras, always with the same age, always with the same serene smile, always talking about the inner sun." Michael listened, fascinated, as the man shared other stories of how Lily had appeared to a desperate young mother in the 70s, to a doctor on the verge of giving up everything in the 80s, to a teacher who had lost faith in her work in the 90s. In each story, continued the gentleman, she left a mark, sometimes a drawing, sometimes a star flower, sometimes just words of wisdom that changed lives. But always, she taught people to rediscover their own light. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Michael looked out the window of his office. In the garden, the star flowers swayed gently with the breeze, their golden petals reflecting the last rays of light of the day. He took the yellow pencil from its glass box, now so small it could barely be used, and smiled. Perhaps it didn't really matter who or what Lily was. What mattered was what she represented, the eternal reminder that even in the darkest moments, there exists a light inside each of us, waiting to shine again. At that moment, as if responding to his thoughts, a single dandelion sprouted in the small pot on his desk, a pot he didn't even remember filling with soil. Its golden petals seemed to shine with their own light, like a small star that had chosen to be born there at that exact moment. And Michael knew with a certainty that came from the depths of his soul that Lily continued to be present, not just in his memories or in the pages of his book, but in each person who learned to rediscover their own inner sun, in each renewed smile, in each heart that learned to walk again. The discovery about Lily's various appearances over the years didn't diminish the magic of her existence. On the contrary, it only confirmed for Michael that some miracles don't need to be explained to be true. The community center, now affectionately known as the House of Light, had become a beacon of hope for people from all over the country. On a particularly special morning, while Michael was organizing a new wing of the center dedicated to children with special needs, an unexpected visitor arrived. She was an elegant elderly lady with white hair and lively eyes who introduced herself as Elizabeth. "I needed to personally meet the man who wrote about Lily," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Because you see, I also knew her. It was 1955, I was only 8 years old, and I was in the orphanage that appears in that old photograph." Michael felt his heart quicken. He invited Elizabeth to sit in the inner garden where the starflowers danced under the morning sunlight. "Lily was my best friend during the most difficult period of my life," continued Elizabeth, her eyes lost in distant memories. "I had just arrived at the orphanage. I was scared and alone. That's when she appeared with that serene smile and a yellow pencil in her hand." Elizabeth took something from her purse, a yellowed piece of paper, carefully preserved in a plastic envelope. It was a drawing made with colored pencils, showing two girls holding hands surrounded by sun rays and flowers. "She told me the same things she told you," smiled Elizabeth, "about the sun that lives inside us, about how true strength comes from the heart. At the time, I didn't completely understand, but her words stayed with me. I ended up becoming a teacher, and I spent my entire life transmitting these lessons to my students." Michael observed the drawing, noticing the similarity with the one Lily had made for him. The same delicate strokes, the same way of representing the sun rays, the same feeling of hope emanating from the paper. "But do you know what's most extraordinary?" continued Elizabeth, leaning forward as if telling a precious secret. "2 years ago, when I retired, one of my former students sought me out. She had become a social worker and worked in a shelter for children. And she told me about a special girl who had passed through there, a girl named Lily who carried a yellow pencil and talked about the sun that lives inside people." Tears were freely flowing down Elizabeth's face now. "When I read your book, when I saw that you had met the same Lily, I knew I needed to come here, because I understood that she wasn't just a child. She was a reminder, an angel perhaps, that we are never truly alone in our pain." Michael took his glass box, where he kept his own yellow pencil, now so small, and the drawing that Lily had made for him. He placed them beside Elizabeth's drawing. "It's amazing," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "how love can cross time in this way, how a single presence can touch so many lives, create so many waves of transformation." That moment, a group of children ran through the garden, laughing and playing. They were part of the center's new program, children from different social realities who there learned together about inclusion, empathy, and the importance of keeping their inner light burning. "Look," smiled Elizabeth, pointing to the children. "Her work continues. Through you, through me, through each person who learns to recognize and share their own light." Michael nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "You know, sometimes I wonder if Lily isn't present in every act of kindness, in every moment of true connection between people. If she isn't actually that part of us that never forgets how important it is to care for one another." A gentle breeze passed through the garden, making the dandelion seeds dance in the air like small shooting stars. One of the children stopped her play to observe the spectacle, her eyes shining with enchantment. "Look, Professor Michael," she exclaimed, pointing to the sky. "The stars are dancing during the day." Michael smiled, recognizing in the girls' words the same poetic outlook that Lily had for the world. "Yes," he answered, "and each one of them carries a little bit of light to plant in some special place." Elizabeth took her purse, removing something that surprised Michael, a new yellow pencil still unused. "I found this morning at my door. There was no note, just the pencil. I think she wanted me to bring it to you to continue writing new stories of light." Michael accepted the gift with trembling hands, feeling as if a circle was closing. The pencil had exactly the same golden tone as the one Lily had given him, as if it had come from the same source of light. A year passed since the meeting with Elizabeth. The House of Light had expanded to 5 other cities, each unit maintaining the same essence of welcome and transformation. The gardens of starflowers multiplied, and with them, the stories of transformed lives. On a special afternoon, Michael was in his office, now decorated with hundreds of drawings made by children who passed through the center, all depicting their own inner suns. The yellow pencil that Elizabeth had given him rested on his desk, beside a new book he was writing. That's when Helen entered hurriedly, her eyes shining with emotion. "Mr. Michael, there's someone here who really needs to talk to you." A young woman entered the room carrying an old folder in her arms. Her eyes were teary, and her hands trembled slightly. "My name is Sarah," she introduced herself. "I'm a social worker, and I work at the shelter where Lily was sent 5 years ago." Michael felt his heart stop for a moment. It was the first time someone had brought concrete news about Lily's fate after that last afternoon on the step. "Please sit down," he invited, trying to control his own emotion. Sarah opened the folder she was carrying, revealing a series of documents. When Lily arrived at the shelter, she brought only 2 things with her, a very worn storybook and this. She took a yellowed envelope from the folder. Inside was a drawing, the same type of drawing that Lily made with her characteristic sun rays and starflowers. But this one was different. It showed a small girl holding the hand of a man in a wheelchair, both surrounded by a large golden sun. "The date of this drawing," continued Sarah, her voice trembling, "is 3 months before you met Lily." Michael took the drawing with trembling hands. It was impossible. How could she have drawn him before even meeting him? "But there's more," said Sarah, taking another document. "We checked all the records, all the transfers of children at that time. There is no Lily with the description you gave. In fact, there was no transfer of any child during that period." The silence that followed was filled only by the soft sound of the wind among the starflowers in the garden. Michael looked out the window, observing how the rays of the afternoon sun made the golden petals shine. "You know," he finally said, a serene smile on his face, "I think I always knew, deep in my heart, that Lily was more than a simple child. She was a reminder of what all of us can be when we choose to see the world through the eyes of love." Sarah nodded, wiping away a tear. "The most incredible thing is that, since your story was published, we've begun to receive reports from all over the country. People who knew a girl named Lily, always with the same description, always with a yellow pencil, always teaching about the inner sun. The dates vary. Some stories are from decades ago, others are recent. But the message is always the same." Michael took the yellow pencil on his desk, twirling it between his fingers as he used to do. "It's not our legs that make us walk," he murmured, "but the light we carry inside us." At that moment, a group of children ran through the garden, outside. One of them stopped, looking at the office window. For a brief instant, Michael saw, or thought he saw, a familiar smile, a serene look he knew so well. But before he could be sure, the girl had already run to join the other children, leaving only a sensation of peace and the certainty that some angels don't need wings to fly, just a yellow pencil and the ability to see the light inside each heart. Years passed after that. The House of Light multiplied throughout the country, bringing hope and transformation to thousands of people. The yellow pencil, now kept in a special glass box in the center of the first unit, continues to inspire new stories of overcoming and rebirth. And if you pass by there on a sunny afternoon, you might see among the starflowers in the garden a small girl with a serene smile, carrying a yellow pencil and whispering ancient truths about the sun that lives inside each one of us. Because in the end, Lily was never just a person. She was and continues to be that magical part inside each of us that never forgets how to shine.